When he came to yeshiva, because his son was my roommate, I got exclusive time with Rav Schachter. Wow. It was amazing. And Rav Schachter broke down, like literally crying, tears, literally tears.
Wow.
Are you literally justifying that God is telling you to go into Israel and he's making it abundantly clear? Any question you might have, God is showing you this is where you need to be and you're not going to come. Are you kidding me right now?
Hillel's brother Ari was stabbed in the back by a terrorist, I think 8 years ago.
In the neck.
In the neck, right, excuse me. So when that happened, do you feel that you or members of your family maybe wished, I wish we just stayed. This wouldn't have happened if we'd stayed in New York. This is David Goldenberg, and I'm joined today by Hillel Fuld. Hillel, thanks for joining me.
Absolutely, thanks for having me.
For sure. So for those of you guys who don't know, Hillel Fuld is a tech influencer, Israel influencer, Aliyah influencer, huge presence on Facebook, on Twitter, YouTube. I'm sure the list goes on beyond that, but I think people get the idea. And we're here to talk about actually something that's maybe a little closer to your heart, the aspect of Aliyah in Israel. And I read that you came here when you were 15 years old with your family. And I'd love if you could start by taking me back to the moment where your parents told you we're moving to Israel. Where were you and what did 15-year-old Hillel feel at that time?
So I just finished 9th grade in MTA, yeshiva in New York. I don't actually remember the moment. In my head, I was like in bed and it was at night and my mom came into my room and told me, but I don't even know if that's something that my memory tells me and it's not even true. I don't know. Okay. But yeah, I finished 9th grade and they said, we're moving to Israel. And I was like, what the heck, in middle of high school? But yeah, so we moved and I came here in 10th grade and it was definitely not an easy age, nor was it an easy transition. But 35 years later, I could tell you it was the best thing that ever happened to me. And it's impossible, by the way, not to speak of, when speaking about Aliyah, I don't know that anybody else has said this. I didn't read it anywhere, but last week's parsha was Naso. Naso means to raise, to ascend. Ba'aloscha means to ascend.
Yeah.
There's got to be a message here. And you look throughout this week's parsha, there's so many different lessons for Aliyah, from the misonanim that the Jewish people were just complaining, oh, we don't like our food, we don't like our drinks, Israelis are rude and they're bad drivers and bureaucracy, all the complaints that we've all heard. There's that, and there's throughout the entire parsha, you have Pesach Sheni. What's Pesach Sheni? Again, the Farshim say that, who are these people that were tameh, that were impure? Why did they ask for a second opportunity? Because these are the people that carried Yosef's bones from Egypt to Israel. And so they were tameh, they were impure, so they needed a second opportunity to do Pesach, to do the Karban Pesach. And so, again, we're talking about Joseph. Joseph, he had every reason to be angry at God. He was sold into slavery, he was almost killed, he was falsely accused, he was in jail. He had a hard life. And then he rose to power in Egypt, and he was the most Egyptian you can be. He was fully assimilated, he lived in the palace. And what was his last wish? Just please don't bury me in Egypt. Please bring my bones to the land of Israel and bury me there. Right. Moshe Rabbeinu, his only request, just please let me enter the land. And God said no. And I wrote in a Torah that I said, can you imagine the look on Yosef and Moshe's face when I say to them, listen, I live here in Woodmere. I could get on a plane for 10 hours and land in the land of Israel and build a life there, but I think I'm going to stay here. Can you imagine? Could you even imagine what their response would be? They wouldn't even know how to handle that. So if you read the Parsha with a lens of Aliyah, you'll see there's actually a lot of different things throughout the Parsha that, in my opinion, hint to the importance of moving to Israel.
That's, I think, a great insight. And you mentioned it here, I read it also in a previous interview you gave, that it wasn't easy coming as a teenager. What was the hardest part that people don't understand about teenage Aliyah?
Well, I had 2.5 years to get used to the idea of serving in the army, right? You grow up in Israel, you grow up knowing you're going to the army when you're 18. I came here when I was 15, so I had 30 seconds to get used to that idea. And so what ended up happening ultimately is that I hated the army because I was just not emotionally or mentally prepared for it.
Wow.
There's the language barrier, which for me was less of an issue because I was in Israel when I was in 6th grade for a year. So I learned Hebrew. My dad had gotten a sabbatical. So we were here for a year and I learned Hebrew. So the language was less of an issue, but my friends, all my friends in New York, this wasn't the days of FaceTime and social networks. You moved to Israel, that's it. You're cutting off all your friends. So there was that. There was definitely the cultural aspect, the integration into Israeli society. But the people have to remember, when I came here 35 years ago, Israel was a third world country. You couldn't get deodorant in this country. You couldn't get like orange juice or peanut butter, right? It was when I moved to Israel, there was only one reason that a Jew would move to Israel, and that's because of Zionism, right? It was not an easy transition. Right. Today, I can name 50 reasons that a Jew should come to Israel. If you're not a Zionist, are you a capitalist? Are you in tech? Are you a businessman? Israel's the pinnacle, the epitome of everything. Yeah. It's paradise here, let alone, not to mention, the fact that you're clearly no longer home and no longer welcome outside of Israel. So again, it was difficult then, and I'm not saying it's not difficult today. There are difficulties, there are challenges for sure. But as I wrote in this Dvar Torah that I'm going to be posting soon, the difficulty of moving to Israel is not a bug, it's a feature.
Yeah.
It's built in to the process of acquiring the land of Israel is hardship, is challenge. It's not a bug. It comes Absolutely. With the turf. And people need to understand that.
That's right. I was about to actually say, so I wrote a little booklet about how to unite the Jewish people. Currently it's in Hebrew, but I've got it translated to English, so it should be available soon in English. And one of the things I mentioned there is, does it cost a lot of time to come? Yes. Does it cost a lot of money to come? Yes. Does it cost a lot of effort, blood, sweat, tears? Yes. And my question is, did you ever hear about somebody getting in shape by having easy, fast food? No. Right? Everything that's worth doing costs. And the more expensive it is, the more valuable it is. So you shouldn't come in spite of the price. You should come because of the price. The price tells you how special this place is.
I like that.
And so for a long time, I thought if I want to encourage people to make Aliyah, I should tell them all the reasons it's amazing and so forth. And I think that there's definitely an aspect to that. I also want to talk about the things that are difficult so that on the one hand, people can be ready for it. And maybe on the flip side, we can also maybe brainstorm out loud. If you pay this price, there has to be a flip side, like a benefit that comes out on the other side. So maybe you can share, was there a moment in those first months you thought, I don't belong here? What happened if there was such a moment? Or maybe it was the opposite. You really felt, it sounded like maybe it wasn't such a smooth transition originally, as you mentioned, the cultural integration and so on. Can you share a bit more about that?
Yeah, so, but before I do that, again, I have to say it because it's very important, and we have to remember that Israel back then was different than Israel today, right? Even though there are still challenges, I'm not saying there aren't, but it is infinitely easier to move to Israel today than it was back then. Right. But for me, I didn't have a few hard moments. I had a few hard years. Wow. And from my perspective, throughout high school and even when I was in yeshiva, it was clear to me that I was going to leave, that I was not staying here. Wow. And there was a moment that all changed. I don't think I've ever told this story before. I was learning in the yeshiva Karen Biavna in Hesder, and my roommate was the son of one of the biggest rabbis in the world, as far as I'm concerned, Rav Schachter from Yeshiva University.
Wow. Sure.
And when he came to yeshiva, because his son was my roommate, I got exclusive time with Rav Schachter. Wow. It was like amazing. So at one point we were speaking, and I mentioned to him, we made Aliyah, but I'm not staying, I'm leaving. And Rav Schachter broke down, like literally crying, literally tears. And I felt like I was, again, speaking to Moshe Rabbeinu, who was hearing that I had the chance to live in Israel and I'm leaving. He just broke down. He's like, you're leaving Israel? And I was like, yeah, that I don't know what it was about that moment, but that deeply impacted me. And I think that was the moment that I made that flip and realized I'm a Jew. I belong here. I'm staying here. I'm going to work through it. There are hardships. But again, now 35 years later, I go to the States, I go to wherever around the world, and I absolutely do not believe that I have a lower quality of life than any of my friends. I don't think that's true. I don't think you have to cut your salary in half. I don't think you have to lower your quality of life. I think all of the excuses, and I say excuses not in a derogatory way, but all of the justifications that a Jew once had to not move to Israel, the list was long. Right. None of them apply today. None of them. There is no excuse for the Jewish people as a collective to not come back to Israel. Now, are there individuals with their specific circumstances? Of course. If your kid has to finish high school, everyone, fine. But as a collective, the Jewish people need to come home. And even if you can't come right now, as a Jew, you need to understand that this is where you need to end up. And this is your end game, even though it might be hard right now. And when I speak to people, whether it's in America or England or wherever, who say to me, I want to make Aliyah, but I can't right now, that's fine. We're good. Let me help. Maybe I can make it easier. But when I speak to Jews who say to me, I'm not making Aliyah, I'm staying here. And not only do they say that, but they justify it with their, what's it called when you justify your own beliefs. Forget the word right now. But that really just drives me crazy. Confirmation bias is the word I was looking for. Are you literally justifying that God is telling you to go into Israel and he's making it abundantly clear? Any question you might have, God is showing you this is where you need to be, and you're not going to come. Are you kidding me right now? And if I'm speaking to a religious Jew, I'm like, do you read the Torah? Do you read our davening, our prayers? Do you read the Gemara that says that if you're outside of Israel, you're literally worshiping an idol? This is the Gemara. Do you know what the Ramban says? You're not even keeping the mitzvos. You're literally not a Jew outside of Israel. You're just practicing. So if you want to look at our prayers, you want to look at the Torah, you want to look at the Rishonim, you want to look at the Gemara, you want to look at modern rabbis. Rav Chaim Kanievsky wasn't a Zionist by any means. When he was asked about moving to Israel, he said some things that were pretty harif. He said a street cleaner in Israel is more righteous than a Rosh Yeshiva in America. That's what he said. So you're a Jewish person. How do you not listen to God?
Yeah, I read a post of yours that was quite interesting, actually. You're answering some of the common reasons people give why they can't come now. And one thing that I've heard a lot is, I've got my kids here, I can't leave my kids behind, or I've got older parents, I can't leave them behind. What do you say to people who find themselves in that situation?
I say that's totally fine. I understand you have circumstances. Your parents will live to 120, but if you need to be with them and as they're getting older, that's totally fine. And when they do return to their creator after 120 years, then you come. Of course, you have circumstances. I'm not dismissing that, of course. But given that, you have to ask yourself, if you have a gun to your head, right, a real gun, and the person holding the gun says to you, listen, if you're not on a plane in 1 hour from now, I'm pulling the trigger, you would get on a plane. And all of those justifications and quote-unquote excuses and reasons and again, valid, they would disappear because it's life and death. And so if you would get on a plane because you have a gun to your head, then presumably, just logically speaking, you are not getting on a plane right now because you don't believe you have a gun to your head. And my question is, if what's going on today in the diaspora, if the level of anti-Semitism that we're seeing today doesn't constitute a gun, then what does? Because Jews are being beaten in the streets, shuls are being vandalized, Jewish businesses are being destroyed, businesses are not willing to serve Jews, Jews are being murdered and hunted down. How is that not a gun to your head? How is that not reading the writing on the wall? How does that not answer the question that we all asked ourselves? Why didn't the German Jews leave? And I didn't have an answer, but now I do. Why aren't the American Jews leaving? Same reason. I made Aliyah from Montreal, and yesterday, the day before, they had this march where they hung Ben Gvir in effigy and Netanyahu in effigy and Trump in effigy. And just the hanging in itself, regardless who it is obviously a step beyond what needs to be protected in free speech. And I was pretty shocked because the law in Canada is nowhere near as permissive as the law in America regarding the boundaries of free speech. And the Prime Minister, as of now, hasn't come out saying anything about it. But beyond that, I was looking this up with ChatGPT. What are some of the parallels? What happened? What were the red flags for Jews in Germany before the Holocaust? And they mentioned, ChatGPT gave me 3 things. It said, 1, basically the state gradually took away any rights or civil protections, equality for the Jews, and eventually actually made laws explicitly against them. And one of the things that's happened is they took away charitable status from 6 Jewish charities, basically just for having an association with Israel. And you see that the people who've shot at shuls there have not, as far as I'm aware, yet been brought to justice. And these people are having basically publicizing free hate speech in the most gruesome way. And of course, Netanyahu and Ben Gvir are just symbols for basically proud Jews who don't back down and so on. And so to me, it's shocking to see a place where I grew up and I thought of pretty decently. They even interviewed me for Israel's 70th anniversary for the Canadian radio. And I said, yeah, Canada is a decent place, whatever. I would definitely not say the same thing today. Not to say that 1938 is here, but look at the trend, right? Why wait till it gets to 1938
to try to get out to Switzerland, kind of thing.
Yeah, I think when I speak to people about the situation today, my question to them is, can you name a single thing that happened in Germany, listen carefully, that led up to the Nuremberg laws? Because once there was legislation against Jews, that was it. It was game over. I'm not talking about that. When anti-Semitism was institutionalized, that's it. It was a point of no return. But what led up to that? If you make a list of things that led up to that moment that anti-Semitism was institutionalized, you have, again, shuls being vandalized, Jewish businesses being boycotted, businesses refusing to do all of it.
Yeah,
and it's all happening. Literally, it's all happened today. There's not a single thing, not one. I challenge you. Name me one thing that happened in pre-Holocaust Germany that hasn't happened today. There's not even one single thing.
I know. It's a really crazy time that we're living. But I want to change a teeny bit. One thing that I've heard from family, and this morning I was talking to a friend, and he said he would love to come. His wife's a bit scared, to be honest. And also there's the question of the kids not coming and the parents. And I want to say about that. I understand the consideration to be there to care for older parents. But if you do that and your kids are there, that means in 15 or 20 years, you'll be the older parents. And then your kids will be the older parents. And at some point, somebody's got to say, we can't keep going on this way. All right, okay. Let's put that aside for a sec. Going back to the question about fear that this friend's wife mentioned, and my mom in the past has shared similar thoughts, my cousin. I think the fear that people have is, God forbid, of a loved one being killed. And that is very sadly what happened to your brother Ari. For those watching this who don't know, Hillel's brother Ari was stabbed in the back by a terrorist, I think 8 years ago.
In the neck.
In the neck, right, excuse me. So when that happened, do you feel that you or members of your family maybe wished, I wish we just stayed. This wouldn't have happened if we'd stayed in New York?
Not even for a split second. Not a single family member of mine for even a split second had that thought. Absolutely not. That's not how Jews think. I'm sorry. Again, we're talking about Aliyah. No one said it's going to be easy. Yeah, we paid the ultimate price. That's tragic. I'm not, God forbid, we miss Ari and tremendous hero, etc., etc. But he literally died al Kiddush Hashem. He died sanctifying God's name, saving another Jew in his last moment.
Right.
What a source of pride. Imagine telling my grandmother in Auschwitz that her grandson Ari would be a national hero of the state of Israel. Incredible. So yeah, again, obviously it's terrible and it's tragic, but from that to we should leave Israel or we shouldn't have come to Israel, didn't even cross our minds.
Amazing. There's the Hillel Fuld print newsletter now. I've read, I think I got the Hanukkah copy. I didn't get, unfortunately, in my area. I distributed the Pesach one. I met Steve, the editor, and I imagine you have some role in that. Now, you have, a huge presence on social media. What's the point of having a print newsletter, considering you already have a lot of activity on social media, and I think probably a lot of the messages there arguably could just be shared to a wider audience, putting that effort into social media?
Yeah, I don't think those things are mutually exclusive. First of all, I'm not behind the magazine. The Hillel Fuld Foundation is, but there are people who don't consume content on the internet, whether it's people who are elderly, whatever it may be. Many people on Shabbat, specifically in shul, so I think for sure there's an overlap in terms of audiences, but there are many people who don't read things on the internet and aren't on social media who this provides them with some Torah insights and some incredible stories about Ari and his legacy. So I think it's just expanding the audience. And yes, there are people who look to read on Shabbos and aren't in front of the internet because they don't have their phones with them. And for them, this is reading material for that.
That's a good point. That's a very good point. So there's... on transition, so now you're a dad, Baruch Hashem, you and your wife have the beautiful family. Saw a picture with one of the interviews. What would you say that your kids understand about Aliyah that you as a 15-year-old could not have understood? Or about Israel?
My kids lack nothing. Nothing. I say to them regularly, is there anything that you want in this world, materialistically, not spiritually, materialistically? Is there anything that you want in this world that you don't have? Nothing. Yeah, okay, their father works very hard, their mother works very hard to give them an amazing life, but When I bring them to the States, whether it's to the 5 towns or wherever I bring them, they look around, they see the gashmias, they see the materialism, and then they look back at their lives and they're not lacking anything. And so I think my kids would be the first to tell you that life in Israel is absolutely incredible and every day is an absolute miracle living in this phenomenal country.
That's remarkable. That's really remarkable. So you had an easier time than other people learning Hebrew because that sabbatical year. Was there a time when you realized that language is opening a door instead of closing them? Are there any funny stories about learning Hebrew as an old age?
Yeah, I think that's another example. I think back then you really did need Hebrew because everything was in Hebrew. Today every street sign's in English, every menu in every restaurant's in English, everyone speaks English. There's no such thing. You can't speak a word of Hebrew. I have friends in my neighborhood who've been in Israel for years, but came in their 60s, living an amazing life here, building a beautiful house, having an amazing job. They don't speak one word of Hebrew, not a single word.
Wow.
So is it good to know Hebrew? Is it helpful socially? Of course. Is it a necessity? Is it a deal breaker if you don't speak Hebrew? Absolutely not.
Yeah, I hear. Okay. Would you say that there were things that being an American gave you that helped you in Israel?
Yeah, I think it helped me in my career that I have let's call it an American mindset. I often joke that I did marketing for 20 years. I often joke that the difference between sales and marketing is one word, a word that does not exist in the Hebrew language. And that's not a joke. It really does not exist. And that word is subtlety. Subtlety. Marketing is subtle. There's no such word. Literally no such word in Hebrew as subtle. And I think that just pretty much by definition, if you grew up in the West, there's that politeness and there's that, again, for lack of a better term, that subtlety. You're not in your face, right? Israelis are a little bit in your face. And that's why generally Israelis are not very good at marketing. And so I think that growing up in the States, I think that lent a helping hand to my mentality, which then I think was a big component of my career.
That's remarkable. And the other way around, is there something that Israel forced you to develop that America wouldn't have forced you to develop?
I think resilience. I think we are in the worst neighborhood on earth here. I think we have every possible challenge that you can imagine. Again, both on a personal level, having lost my brother, but on a national level as well. I think you don't get used to the craziness. It's not something you need to get used to. We need to rid ourselves of all the terror and all of the things, but you also get used to resilience and the ability to not only survive, but to thrive. If you look at the Israeli tech world, it's literally it's a Torah verse in the Torah, literally, not in the commentary, not in the Talmud, in the Torah. It says that the Jews were in Egypt, and the more the Egyptians persecuted the Israelites, the more the Israelites flourished. That's right. Counterintuitive. It doesn't make any sense, but that's our story. The more they terrorize us, the more we innovate. You really could see it in the data. Go look throughout any of the wars, any of the operations, anything. The more they terrorize Israel, the more they persecute us, the more antisemitism, the more we innovate, the more we build. And that's a real thing. And that's something that I think only applies to the Jewish people. And it's something that you learn throughout life in Israel, the hardships. You get thicker skin and you learn to be resilient and to be strong and to flourish and thrive under sometimes not the best circumstances.
Absolutely. I think it's some very true points. And you can see that also. It's very interesting with the stock market, where we've been at war for 2.5 years now. And the stock market is just going up and to the right and up, assuming you have a graph going from left to right, well, reading in English. But just going up all the time, basically. And it's not logical for that to happen when, for example, at the start of the war, we drafted something like 500,000 men into the army. Virtually every second or third male adult in the country was in uniform. That just drains the labor supply, right? How does a country have this phenomenal growth when something like that happens? And just the rate at which they're publishing stories about this startup got acquired for tens of millions or hundreds of millions, or this one went public for so many billions, and just thank you. It's incredible.
Yeah, it's literal miracles. It's not just tech. Even if you look at things like the Iron Dome, these things are miraculous, literally miraculous. Even the people that invented them, the people that made these systems, will be the first to tell you that they should not work as well as they work. It's just a fact. Yeah. It's a technological wonder. And all of our aerial defense systems, each one independently, are incredible. And they work together. Makes no sense whatsoever. It's really incredible stuff.
It is incredible stuff. There's a friend shared a story about that the Iron Dome here has a success rate at shooting down incoming rockets and missiles around 85-90%. So they sold it to Ukraine, I think, and it's the exact same system. It's everything identical. It has something like a 50% success rate in Ukraine. The exact same technology. Not saying that to knock the system, but just God's like winking like this, saying, hey guys, in case you didn't realize that this is me, and you're saying it's miraculous, the daughter of the chief rabbi of Tzfat, Rabbi Shmuel Eliyahu's daughter, Rabbanit Chali Bazak, pointed this out. My wife shared, she goes, when the Israelites were on the verge of crossing the sea, right? They were waiting, Nachshon had not gone into the sea yet, and the Egyptians were shooting arrows and catapults at them. And God had his cloud literally intercepting them. That's exactly what we have today. They shouldn't, like, they had maybe a little more biblical awareness. The developers might have called it the pillar of cloud, basically, if I translate the Hebrew term from
Clouds of glory.
Bible.
Yeah, 100%. Could not agree more.
Remarkable. I want to leave with maybe one more question. What's something that you thought would be hard that actually turned out easier than expected?
In Israel specifically, you're saying?
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't think of things like that. I don't think, oh, this is going to be hard. That's going to be hard. You face the challenges. Building a career, that's something that, if you look at my career, it doesn't really make much sense. But yeah, life in Israel, it's just with the right perspective, I think it's just infinitely easier than it's perceived. Many people have these misconceptions. Oh, I can't afford to live in Israel. Really? Who told you that? Like, so if you come with the right mindset that this is your home, this is where you need to be, then you make things work. And that's really the bottom line.
Yeah. Yeah. So, okay. I was going to say, can you go in a bit more detail about that? Because that is something that you hear people are like, well, you guys have such high cost of living. How am I going to make it? I'm not.
It's not true. In other words, yeah, is Jerusalem expensive? Is Tel Aviv expensive? Of course. But there are 10,000 places outside of Jerusalem and Tel Aviv that aren't expensive. You can live in Mevaseret. You can live in Ma'ale Adumim, which has already become a little more expensive, but the list is endless. You can live in Yeshuvim, in towns, in Yehuda v'Shomron. There's literally thousands of places for someone to move to Israel and live in an affordable way. Yeah, okay, so cars are expensive. I want to be clear. I'm not dismissing certain realities and certain challenges. There are challenges. It's not a walk in the park, but it's absolutely a lot easier than most people think it is.
Yeah, there's this woman who wrote a book about a different topic, but she mentioned something actually interesting related to, you mentioned the cars thing. She pointed out that essentials here are cheap and luxuries are expensive, right? So for example, Jewish school for your kids, which is essential, is cheap here. It's covered by the state. You want something fancier, even like friends who are sending their kids to schools where they dorm, they're still paying like a quarter or whatever small percentage of what they would be paying in America for a day school, never mind for a place where they'd be dorming and so on. So
yeah, I just came back from Reichman University. Reichman University is the only private, non-governmental university in Israel, private, and it's expensive. There's tuition, right? You go to Bar Ilan, you go to Hebrew U, you go to Tel Aviv, all of the universities, it's heavily subsidized. It still costs, but it's heavily subsidized. Reichman's not. And Reichman's full price. You're paying full tuition. And I know that Reichman's expensive because I have friends who went there. I've lectured there. And I was just sitting with one of the heads of the programs, and he told me what tuition is there. And it's literally a quarter of what colleges cost in America. We're talking $20,000, which is expensive in Israel. Sure. But are you even comparing? And it's no less good as far as academia and being an academic institution. It's a superb academic institution.
Right. Is that 20 per year, or is that 20 for the whole degree?
I think 20 per year, if I'm not mistaken. Which again is expensive for Israel, but compare it to Harvard, compare it to like Yale, it's nothing. Yeah. So really, you can live a very comfortable life here and live an affordable life here. And if you have means and if you want to live a better, higher quality of life, whether that's buying better cars, living in more expensive areas, that's also an option. But there absolutely are endless opportunities to live in Israel and live a very affordable and comfortable life.
Absolutely. In closing, would you like to share a message with the audience?
Yeah, there's a famous story that I'm sure many of you have heard, that there's a man who gets on a roof during a storm and the water is approaching, and he says, I'm going to stay up here, God's going to save me. And they send him a boat, and they say, get in the boat. And he says, God's going to save me. And they said, but get in the boat. He says, no, God's going to save me. They send him a helicopter. They say, get in the helicopter. He says, no, God's going to save me. And then he drowns. And he goes up to God and says, I don't understand. I believed in you. Why did you let me drown? Why didn't you save me? And God says, I didn't save you. I sent you a boat. I sent you a helicopter. You didn't get on it. And after 120 years, our friends in the diaspora are going to go up to God and say, God, I don't understand. Jews prayed for the ingathering of the exiles for thousands of years. Why didn't you bring us home? You know what God's going to say? I didn't bring you home. I sent you elal.com. I sent you nefesh b'nefesh. I made Israel a paradise.
That's right.
You still didn't get the message, so I sent you Mamdani.
Wow.
For you to understand that you're not home. It's time to go home. You didn't get the message. Don't blame me.
Wow. Wow. Milim kedorbanot, as we say in Hebrew.
Yeah, that's a lesson that people have to open their eyes. It's time.
Absolutely. Thank you.